everyone. We are ready for our next session, and I'm excited about this session because we're going to hit some AI. We are also going to talk about lesson planning, your first lesson plan, your only lesson plan due for this semester. So we're going to take a look at that also. So let's review a few important concepts. I want to keep bringing these before your attention. That helps us move it from our working memory to our long-term memory. So we're going to hit, again, the three types of non-decoders. If 70% of students are not reading on grade level, 70% of those students in your classroom are going to fall into one of these three categories. So our non-decoders, so they're stuck at the word level, and you'll be able to tell they're stuck at the word level by listening to them read out loud. If they're struggling, if they're saying the wrong word, if they're trying to break the word apart, and you can see that kind of choppiness at the word level, then those are non-decoders. Our disfluent students are students who are reading choppy or sound like a robot. So that's a fluency issue. Or it may be they read smoothly, but they read monotone and there's no change in their voice. That's also a fluency issue. Remember what makes fluency? Prosody, the way our voice sounds, and automaticity. So we know a word, we automatically see it and know it, and we're able to read and it sounds like speaking. So those are easy fixes. We just need more time practicing reading out loud and reading with expression. And then our last category are non-comprehenders. So they might read beautifully and have expression, but they can't do a retell and they can't answer basic questions. So their brain just isn't paying attention to what they're reading. So they need a strategy or they need to do some annotations. We also talked about how do we support comprehension. We have to have with every text a pre or a before, a during, and an after reading strategy. So before is when we are looking at previewing vocabulary, making connections, making things relevant. Read an interesting article the other day about the adolescent brain and the way that it's formed. And if you think about it right now, the relevance in teaching is so important. If kids find something's not relevant, they can swipe off. They don't have to pay attention to anything that doesn't connect with them or grab their attention. They can just tune out. So more now than ever before, we have to help them make connections of what we're doing in the classroom, why it's relevant. And that's what the before teaching strategies are all about. It's about helping them see why they need this information, how it's going to benefit them now. It's hard to say this is going to benefit you 15 years from now because they don't really think long term. Their brain isn't developed for that yet. And so everything is very short-term gratification. And if they're not motivated by grades or something that's very immediate, like academic-wise, how do we make this relevant to them so that they care and they're engaged in the topic and in the conversation? So that's a big part of our pre or before during work. Our during strategies, how we interact. So we're reading it out loud, we're annotating, we're partner reading. What does the reading part look like? We don't just say read the text. We always have to give them some way to read the text. And then the after reading strategy, what are we doing with this information to move it from our working memory to our long-term memory? We've got to think about it. We've got to write about it. We've got to talk about it. So something has to be done with that text afterwards. The strategies that I shared with you were choral reading. We're reading out loud together simultaneously. Going to keep bringing that up because that is critical. Echo reading is partner reading. I read and then you repeat what I've read. That does a couple of things. If you're a shy reader or a struggling reader, all my mental energy is going into decoding, but I can stop and take a break. And then now I can listen to my partner read and kind of that's where I get my comprehension. So I get a chance to read out loud and practice, but I also get a chance to hear the content said out loud. And that helps my comprehension. And then read and review, another partner strategy. I read, but I find a question about what I've read to pose to you. You're paying attention because you're anticipating that question. You've got to answer it. So we're both accountable and we're both paying attention. We're reading with a purpose. That's why that's effective. And then how do we make something a dramatic reading? We can pop anything into AI and say, make this a play for 3 people or 4 people. And that's how we can get in some prosody practice. And then I introduced our annotation coding system. So here's a way to read, and I would stagger it or scaffold it. So every sentence needs a code until they get used to doing that. Otherwise, they might do one thing on a page. Okay. So every sentence needs a code. And if it's just, I got it, then you have a check mark at the end. But it helps my brain pay attention to each and every individual sentence. And so I'm reading with deeper meaning. And this helps that category of non-comprehenders. They can read beautifully, but their brain's not paying attention. This helps make that connection. So I want to talk quickly about a few components that aid comprehension. So we talked last time about the factors that aid comprehension. So high-level questioning, building background knowledge, annotating, intentional vocabulary instruction, which we talked a lot about vocabulary, and your lesson plan is going to be focused on vocabulary. The use of graphic organizers, summarizing text, doing evidence-based writing, and reading with a partner, which those previous strategies I shared with you do that. And then we kind of went into more depth. I want to hit, so that was our review. So I want to hit a new topic of AI in the classroom. And this has been a hot topic for teachers because up until this point, AI was only used to catch cheaters. And now we are training our brain and our teachers differently. So first we have our narrow or weak AI. And this is just what we encounter every day. So this particularly excels at an individual task, such as like recognizing faces, answering queries, but it can't generalize beyond this training. So Siri cannot drive a car, a chess engine cannot translate languages. It has like one purpose. General AI, it's sometimes called strong AI or AGI, artificial general intelligence. So it can learn anything a human can learn. It can reason, it can problem solve, it can adapt in different contexts, not just one specific task. It can also exhibit self-aware consciousness and even emotions, and that is kind of scary. If we compare narrow AI and general AI, we would say that narrow AI is meant for one task. Okay, it's trained like Siri or Google Translate, Roomba, that gets the crumbs under the table. That it has one purpose. Right now, general AI doesn't exist, at least not for like the general population. But I'm telling you this because very soon it will. This is the reason that we're presenting this information to you right now and to, working with teachers all over the country. And we're talking about this because it's coming so fast. General AI can be used to solve math problems, write a poem, diagnose a patient, cook a recipe without it being retrained. It can understand context as deeply as humans, even including like nuances, culture, ethics, stuff that it can't do right now. So right now, schools typically use ChatGPT or they use something called Canva or Magic Write. These are also a narrow AI. So it's important for teachers to know that students think AI is smarter than it is. I mean, I have to admit, I think it's pretty smart. So it's not just students that think like that. I'm wildly impressed with what it can do. Admittedly, sometimes I remind myself that I'm not having an actual conversation with it. If you have the app, you can just have a conversation with it, even the free version. And it's crazy because they've changed it now to where the voice will like hum and haw and say to make it sound more real. It's wild. But super intelligent AI, this is another concept that's, on the cusp. It's on the horizon, but it's a little bit further out. But this will even surpass human intelligence, like across the board. Science, creativity, emotion, social skills, decision-making, all of it. So narrow AI solves one task. General AI matches like human performance, like intellectual type tasks. But super AI is very controversial, but it's said that is going to be able to cure diseases, solve climate change, design better governments, end poverty. Like, it's supposed to be the end all be all. And there's huge debates around the ethics of it, safety, all that is coming into play. But for right now, that's still on the horizon and not part of our reality. And I forgot to mention, so in the corner, this is my friend Diana. AI in education is her specialty. So I'm borrowing these slides from her, and this is from one of her recordings. So that's why you see my friend Diana's face in the corner there. So AI can sound very futuristic, but there's stuff that you use every day. It's already baked into the tools that you have. So voice assists like Alexa, Siri, Google Assistant, they interpret your voice, they understand your intent, they respond, whether it's a time setting or you're texting a friend, playing music, all of those things are AI. Streaming services like Netflix, they analyze your viewing, and then they will do the algorithm and start suggesting things that you might enjoy. That's AI also. Email predicts what you're going to type and makes suggestions. Maps, Google Maps, Waze, Apple Maps, they use the traffic and predictive algorithms to show you the fastest route. There's translation apps like Google Translate. We do our AI, or we do our online shopping, and Amazon will recommend things. And then there are a lot of curriculum that will adapt to how well a student did on a test or a question and say they need more practice with this and offer more practice problems on a specific skill. But I want to talk about a few myths. So it's no surprise that this has sparked a lot of questions and debate at the school level, but I want to let's unpack some truth behind them. So myth number one, AI is going to replace teachers. Let's be clear, this is not a substitute for educators. So while it can grade our quizzes or generate lesson plans, it can't build our relationships. It can't pick up on a student's mood, at least not yet. It can't foster creativity. It does not have that relational element, which is what makes, school fun, which is what helps kids to be connected. Myth two, AI makes students lazy. This one comes up a lot. It's easy to worry that students will rely on AI to do all the thinking for them, but research, real world classroom use says otherwise. AI can actually boost engagement, performance. So ASU, Arizona State University, has an adaptive math platform, and they said that usage led to like 18% increase in pass rates, 22% drop in course withdrawals, and a 31% increase in students continuing to higher level math. So it really was building momentum rather than creating laziness. Myth three, AI is always biased and dangerous. So it can reflect bias, but that's not the issue. It's the training data and the design decisions behind the tool. So that's why we need informed educators and developers who prioritize ethics and inclusivity. Teach students to spot question bias in AI tools. And it's a skill they're going to need in college and the workplace beyond, to look for bias. AI is only as fair as the data it's trained on. So think of it, again, AI as a tool. We don't ban microscopes because someone misuses one. We teach them to use it responsibly. Myth four, AI is too expensive for public schools. And that's just not true, because there are so many free versions that do everything you need them to do. Myth five, using AI is cheating. Let's be honest, cheating has been around since school has been around. There's always a creative way to find a cheat. But if we're teaching them the intent of how to use it as a revision or a check or a brainstorming or thought partner, that's not cheating, that's learning. Think of it the same way as a calculator, using a calculator. How do you use calculators to help you still do your work? Myth six, AI learning is isolating. Actually, it's freeing up teachers to spend more time working like one-on-one with students or in small groups. And it can personalize materials so that students are working at their level. Instead of teachers having to create lessons to differentiate for all these different levels, AI can help them do. Miss 7, generative AI is the only kind of AI. I just spent just a minute kind of explaining the differences in those, but it is a powerful, growing ecosystem for sure. Myth 8, AI doesn't apply to my subject. Actually, it's showing up in every content area. It can analyze tone and theme in figurative language. It can create simulations in labs, do data analysis, provide feedback on compositions. It really is subject agnostic, meaning it is not tied to any particular academic subject or discipline. And so if you can think about it is AI isn't here to take your job. It's here to take things off your plate and lighten your load so that you can better interact with your students. And we have to really think about it like this. For years, any of their AI platforms have been used to catch cheaters. So we have to change our mindset of we're not policing, we're creating opportunities and we're showing them how to use it effectively. So we just really have to reframe our thinking around it. So let's start with the reality. AI isn't going anywhere. It's already woven into tools that we use every day. Spell check, predictive text, apps on our phones. Our job is not to ban it. It's not to fear it. It is to teach students how to use it ethically. Try using this terminology. Have students disclose how they're using it. They can verify that information is accurate. They can use it as revision so that they put things in their own word and use their own voice. So evidence of learning is no longer just the final project or the essay. It's the process. And that's how we want to teach writing anyway. It's not about the product. It is about the process of how they get there. That's important. And we just now include AI as part of that process, and we recognize that. Within assignments, we just ask students to disclose, how did you use AI to help you? And then ask them to kind of reflect on the process. So what did AI do? What did they change? What's their thinking about the final product? Or where was the gap between AI and between their knowledge and work? And how did they fill in that gap? Let's talk about when AI may be misused. So we've heard about AI detectors, which they sound great in theory. They're not really reliable. And there have been universities that have gotten sued because they can't really prove cheating. They can produce false positives, false negatives all the time. So it might flag somebody's work as this might be AI generated, but it's not a hard and fast right or wrong. And it should never be the sole basis for like a disciplinary action. Think of some practical indicators. Any sudden shift in tone or vocabulary. What teachers are doing now is they're utilizing Google Docs and they're looking at the revision history. And they can see where things didn't just show up on the page as like a full copy and paste. They're actually looking at how each line was typed. So what's the workaround for students? They're using AI and then they're just typing and copying that way. So again, that's okay, but how are we thinking through that? If it produces something for you, what are you doing with that? You're editing, you're changing the language, you're being specific about the word choice, and it will not produce for students like accurate page numbers or things if they have to provide in-text citations. Those are not reliable yet. So even from that standpoint alone, I think the more important focus should be like, let's change it and eliminate it so AI cheating is irrelevant. If we talk to students and ask them to produce their thinking, have a discussion. They can't cheat during an oral defense. They can't cheat during a debate. They've had to already do the work and know it in their brain to be able to justify it or talk about it. If you're going to collect an essay, also collect the process with it, outlines, drafts, reflections. If you're going to build an assignment, ask students to interview someone locally. Ask for like a people focus. They might have to give a 2 to 4 minute explanation instead of submitting an essay, or ask them to use it last and not first. So do all their thinking and then see how AI can help and then have them look at AI and see how that can elevate what they've already created. Or look at AI and see where the falls are, see where the flaws are. They have to diagnose and fix it. But something to watch over the next 12 to 24 months. Multimodal AI is going to become the norm. So these are AI tools that can handle and generate content across formats. So now they are not only just producing text, they can produce images, videos, audio, even interactive media. So where ChatGPT now is just giving you text information, it's going to be able to produce these other things too. There's also going to be some more legal clarifying coming along, meaning like that any AI generated content is going to have like a new system for watermarking that will like verify the authenticity of like the output. Here are 5 routines that you can implement tomorrow. Step 1, ask AI to generate 3 claims about a topic. And then students have to find 2 credible non-AI sources confirming or challenging that. Then they can keep only the claims that they actually verify, and they have to cite all their purposes. So the outcome of that is students are practicing evidence standards. They learn to check their credibility. They stop treating AI as the authority. And AI becomes that conversation starter and not the final word, which is how we want them to shift their thinking. Routine 2 is diagnose the AI, and this is where it gets fun. You give students an AI-generated response, but you plant 2 or 3 issues in it. So maybe it's bias, maybe there's something that's incorrect, or a gap in logic. So their job is to mark the error and correct it and then justify their change. So this really helps them to be that fact checker. This routine flips the script. So instead of students asking AI for answers, they tell the AI, ask me one question about a time until you find my misconception and about photosynthesis. Ask me one question at a time until you find my misconception about photosynthesis, or whatever the topic may be. And then students can submit a Q&A exchange along with a short reflection about what changed their thinking. So that's a really fun strategy too. Routine 4 is voice preservation. So this is how we protect student voice. Students run their work through a tool like Grammarly or another writing assistant, but they don't just accept everything. For each suggestion, they have to either accept it or reject it, and then record an audio or written note explaining why they made that choice. And then some schools, what they're doing is they're not having kids write at all or do anything digital. We've seen this whole full circle moment where they're going back to handwriting, handwritten work, verbal and handwritten work, and moving away from digital writing and submissions. And then routine 5, this is about transfer and adapting. So AI only generates like a generic solution. So it might give you an essay outline, and then students have to adapt it. So just a little bit about AI. I know that's something that's on the forefront of everybody's mind, especially going into ELA, where so much of the writing output is a concern. It's not coming from their brain at all. It's coming from ChatGPT. Text complexity is like a triangle. It is a 3-point system. So there are 3 components. So the first one is reader considerations, and then there's quantitative and qualitative measures. And you can think about it also like a 3-legged stool. You have to have all 3 to have a good text at the right level for students. So let's walk through each one of these. So quantitative measures. So if you've heard the term Lexile, what Lexile is this book? It will give you a number. This is a 720, or this is a 4th grade book. They know that because of the Lexile. You can put a book, you can put content or text into a program, a software, and it will spit out a number. And so it's just measuring the quantitation of that text. It's based on sentence length, the level or number of multi-syllable words, difficult vocabulary or repeated vocabulary, complexity of sentences. So that's measured by just a software. And the myth or misunderstanding that a lot of teachers have is they go just by the Lexile, and you can't do that. You have to have these other factors, or it will make you pick an inappropriate book for a class if this is our thinking. So a Lexile might look something like this. So first grade is any number up to 300. And then a seventh grade should be within this bandwidth. If you're reading, anywhere from 735 to 1,000, you're reading about a seventh grade text. And there's overlap here as well. But that gives you an idea of what a Lexile is. And if you're in a school library, you'll see numbers, additional numbers on the text that will tell you what level it is. And that's a good start, but it's not the end all be all for selecting text. And so because if we select a text by Lexile alone, it will get us in trouble. And I know we're talking about controversial texts also, but this will be one that we accidentally step in. For example, Charlotte's Web, which is typically read in the fourth grade, has the same Lexile as 50 Shades of Grey. Stuart Little has the same Lexile as The Hunger Games. Captain Underpants and Twilight have the same Lexile. And To Kill a Mockingbird is at a fourth grade Lexile, but we typically read that in 10th grade. So we cannot rely on Lexile alone. It's a software. It tells us how long the sentences are, how repetitive the words are, how simple the vocabulary is. That is Lexile. Qualitative dimensions are the last time we talked about inferencing and verbal reasoning, the things that aren't in print on the page. So this is the qualitative part. This has to do more with like dialect in a text, maturity level in a text, underlying meanings, tone, figurative language, those types of things in the text. So a kid from Chicago might have a difficult time understanding Huck Finn's dialect. So that's a qualitative dimension. Having background knowledge is really important. It's really everything that's not on the page in print. It's the reading between the lines is that qualitative dimension. And then the third point is reader considerations. And this is really comes back to my motivation for reading. And then my knowledge of the topic. Remember the baseball study. If I have high knowledge of baseball, I can read at a higher level than maybe my typical reading level because I have high knowledge and maybe I'm more motivated to read it and I've had experience with it. So those reader considerations are part of it. And I don't think we've done this one before, but if we read this one, the batsmen were merciless against the bowlers. The bowlers placed their men in slips and covers, but to no avail. The batsmen hit 1 and 4 after another with an occasional 6. Not once did a ball look like it would hit the stumps or be caught. This was an excerpt from a newspaper, but it might be helpful to tell you that that newspaper was in England. So what is this referring to? It is referring to cricket, the sport of cricket. Now we might be able to decode that. It might be at a fourth grade Lexile based on the repetition in vocabulary and the sentence structure. But unless I have background knowledge, this falls into my reader consideration, I'm not going to understand anything that just said. So I want to shift our conversation to controversial texts. You are reading one now with the Absolute Diary. So what makes a text controversial? It really is about the language, the theme, the historical context, how things are represented. And controversy really shifts over time because at one time, the things that were mainstreamed are now challenged. So for example, Huckleberry Finn, To Kill a Mockingbird, The Bluest Eyes, those were all well-known texts, part of the classic canon, part of the classics and staples in the reading list. And now in many states or school districts, they are challenged books or banned books because they reference slavery or segregation. And it can also have to do with the context or your region, your town, your school district. It all has to do with what your community will tolerate, what their perspectives are, where their leanings are, even politically, of what's acceptable and what's not. So it's something you have to be very sensitive of and aware of. Biggest thing is just to be mindful of your community. So when you go into selecting a text, making sure that you've read it completely. If there are any sensitive subjects, that you make your administrator aware, or you ask your mentor teacher for guidance on that. And sometimes it's very appropriate to send home a note a letter to parents, letting them know that you're going to be reading this text. If they would like a copy, you could provide that. If they have any concerns, they can reach out to you, and then providing the rationale of why you're reading that text versus maybe another one. So your discussion board this week will be to kind of come up with what's your personal philosophy on text selection. And maybe you don't have one, but now's the time to create one or think through that. Back to Lexile, different schools or curriculum may adopt a different measurement system. So one might use the DRA, one might use actual Lexile, and this is a comparison chart. So kind of like the bridge to cross that. So some guided reading uses the letter system. So I might be reading at a letter M. In DRA, it might be a number 28. So again, this is just the quantitative part. Funny story about this. My son, when he was in first grade, brought home a paper, and he was hiding under his blanket in his bed crying with this paper. And so I go in and ask what's wrong. And he said he shows the paper. He said he got an F on his paper. Well, he was in first grade, and it was his reading level. The teacher was sending home his reading level, and he was at the level F, but he didn't understand that. He thought he just got an F. So some miscommunication there. So in your module, you will notice some checkpoint quizzes. There will be a few throughout the semester, and it's again just to help consolidate your learning. So the information that I provide in these lectures, it's going to pull from that. So you're welcome to reference the video, or you're welcome to reference the slide deck as you're answering those quizzes, but it's for you and for your review. Remember, we've talked about learning. What helps our long-term retention is spaced practice. So not mass practice. So this is part of waiting a little bit and then reviewing. So that pulls that into your long-term memory. So that's what those checkpoint quizzes are there for. And now I want to talk about lesson planning and your first lesson plan. So if you go into Canvas, you are going to scroll down past session 7, and you're going to see, do not complete this yet, but this is your assignment for vocab lessons. So before teaching, click on that link, and this is going to show you your lesson plan template, and you'll click on that. You're going to make a copy. And this is your lesson plan template. So your job is going to be to meet with your mentor teacher and ask them about a date when you can implement a lesson plan. And this is going to be over vocabulary. And I'm going to do this in a separate short video that you can reference. And I'm going to model some different vocabulary instruction. But that's what you want to start talking about. I just need a few vocabulary words, and I'm going to have to teach a lesson over, first time introducing these vocabulary words. And so look for that additional video. But here's the lesson plan template to get started. If you're at a different campus and you use a different lesson plan template, feel free to use that and submit yours. We have some additional requirements. We have some kind of reflective prompts along the way that we are going to do, but that is in modules. I'll show you that again. And scrolling down, it's right after session 7. This is the before teaching, is where you're going to find the rubric and all of that. When you're implementing it, you're going to record it just with your phone on an app, and we can go over that. I can share like a how-to video. Then you upload that here and you have a reflection over it. So it's your video where you can like pause it and make comments of how you were doing. I'm putting in here too, this is the form that the teacher will watch while you're implementing your lesson. So that's here. And then I'm going to also share with you a sample vocabulary slide deck. That's here. So those are things you can look at to start thinking about your lesson plan, and no due date on that except by the end of the semester. Before that, give me time to grade and give your teacher time to get their form in. I will also reach out to your host teachers via email and send your requirements once you are familiar with those as well. I'm going to stop sharing. Reach out if you have any questions. Look for the follow-up video on the specific lesson plan assignment, and I'll also demonstrate how to model for you some instruction for for vocab. Thanks, guys.